So, I'll be answering the question of all of the ways that Mapes believes that people can violate the categorical imperative. In addition to that, I'll be answering the question of whether or not I agree with it, and I agree with his perspective on it. So first, the primary part of the categorical imperative that Mapes was referring to was the second part, where he talked about not using people as merely a means to an end. We can use people as an end, but not merely as a means to an end, because that is immoral to do. We don't treat people with respect if we're doing that. Another thing that he touched on was voluntary informed consent and what exactly that, the weight that can hold with a person, and if they have it or don't have it in a situation. So basically, if a person is engaging in an activity, they need to be completely aware of what they're engaging in. A point that was brought up in the lecture by Dr. White was, medically, a surgeon understands what's going on. A patient may not understand the ins and outs of what may be going on with them. That's not their job to do. It's the surgeon's job in that situation to say, this is the procedure you're going to have, this is how it will be done, this is what will happen to you while you're under, and this is how you'll recover. And then the patient says, okay, you can do that to me. If the surgeon were to say, yeah, you're going to go under for a little bit, you'll be out for a couple hours, we'll get you right back up to health, it'll be all good, brand new, you'll be good as new when you're done. That's not really a robust amount of information to go on if you're a patient and you're trying to, get help for whatever ailment you may have. You don't really have an informed consent in that type of situation. And that's some of what Mapes was talking about, is being able to consent to an activity, especially sexual ones. So he says that there are 4 different types of ways that people can violate them. I'll go through and just give a brief description of each, and then an example that I came up with for each of them as well. So the first is deception. So if a person lies or withholds information, that's a form of deception which can violate the categorical imperative, according to Mapes. I said an example for this is a trope in movies, mostly like movies in the 90s or early 2000s, not as much anymore. But it would be a trope that you would see, and it's where a man would very much portray himself as a gay man, and he would gain access to a women's locker room. This basically, the women don't see the man as someone who is going to be looking at them sexually, so they don't care that, he may be in the locker room with them while they're changing, showering, whatever, whereas they may care if he had not portrayed himself as a gay man. And in these movies, you kind of see it's like a ha ha ha, or a thing where the man or the man in the situation who's portraying himself as gay is kind of like getting one over on the women, because he gets to be in the room and he gets to see them change and see all of these things, and he does like it. He is sexually attracted to them. And in that situation, according to Mapes, and probably most other people as well, the women's informed voluntary consent is revoked. It's not given to them in that moment, because they have allowed someone into their space that has portrayed themselves as something that they are not. In addition, there are also 2 types of coercion that Mapes talks about. The first being a current coercion. This is where the consent is completely gone from the situation. It's not present at all. It's not provided to the person, and the other party involved, does not care if the person is consenting or not. An example of this would be rape. The person generally is not going to care if the other person is informed or consenting to the activity at all. Then there is also dispositional coercion as well. This is where the consent has been undermined or degraded to such a degree that it is no longer like an accurate representation of their consent, if that makes sense. An example would be a woman who has initially said no to a man and his advances sexually, and the man continually is berating the woman or being a sex pest to the woman and saying, just constantly coming after them and wanting to, engage with them sexually, and the woman continually says no, If a woman has said no, 19 times and the 20th time she says yes, it's safe to say that there is some sort of coercion that's happened there, possibly dispositional coercion, and that's the example that I provided for that. And then the last two are threats and offers. The threats basically do this or something bad will happen. Offers do this and something good will happen. The threat could be have sex with me or I'll kill your dog or something horrific like that. There is no actual consent given or even offered to the other party. And then the offers is you basically are offering a consensual type of choice to the other person, and then you can say, oh, well, I'll give you something good in return. But in that situation, the offer is underhanded, very much so, because if you say no to your boss, for example, who's offering you a promotion, if you have sex with them, then you're not going to get the promotion, probably, and also you may lose your job. You may get bullied by people in the office or something crazy like that. And those are the 4 types that Mapes talks about. So I do agree with Mapes and his interpretation of the categorical imperative. I also agree that with Morgan, and that just having consent is not enough. I'm sure when Mapes was trying to lay the foundation of these things that he probably didn't think that consent was the only thing involved ever in sex, but Morgan definitely expands on it. And I think that the way that he expands is very interesting as well. There's a lot of different ways that people engage in sex with one another, and the ways that just the desires of people and humanity in general. Can be very different. A lot of people can have sometimes very questionable desires. And just because someone is consenting to it does not mean it's always right. So a good example of that would be significant age gaps in people. You can have a man who is, 45 years old, dating or engaging in a sexual relationship with a woman who is, freshly 18, 19, and it's, there's an argument to be made that just because something like that is legal does not necessarily mean that it is completely morally correct, because, well, I don't know, what are those two people going to talk about in their relationship? What are they going to, other than if it's just a sexual relationship, I suppose. Which, there's an argument to be made that it may not be the most moral thing ever. But then again, there's an argument to be made that if, they're two consenting adults, then what business is it of anyone else? And that's an argument to be made as well. So I agree with Mapes, and I also agree with Morgan in that there are morally ambiguous sexual desires that people have and have had for a very long time, that you can't just say this is correct, this is incorrect, because there's a sliding scale to it. It's a morally gray thing. I think some things, given certain criteria, can certainly be said that no, that is not correct. Pedophilia, bestiality, those things I think are easier to kind of consider and say, no, that's wrong because that, X, Y, Z. Then there are other things that are more ambiguous as well, such as like an age gap, a legal age gap, that is. So, all in all, yes, I do agree with Mapes' view. Again, I think that Morgan's view is better expanded upon, and that human nature is weird. So,